Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and I'm in nature, and I don't know if it's going to rain. It was actually super hot for Sweden in the middle of September. It was 22 degrees, which is basically unheard of in Sweden in September. So I've been pretty lucky, but I think that it might rain soon. Anyway, I wanted to do a review of Marcel Proust's first book of À la Recherche du Temps Perdu, In Search of Lost Time. It's called Du côté de chez Swann. As you can see, I still have a little bit left to read, but most of this is appendix, actually, with like a chronological line and such. So actually, I only have 30 pages left to read, which might take me an hour or so. I don't know if I have an hour before I have to leave. So, as you can see, I have a lot of bookmarks. I'm not going to go through them because it's in French. So I guess I'll make a separate video of me reading some passages in French, just for myself and for anybody who happens to know French. I do want to recommend Renaud Contini's video about Proust being an INFP, basically. And he goes through a passage that's in the second half of this book that talks about Swann, which is a man. And Swann is basically in love with, obsessed by this girl. And he is absorbed by this music that reminds him of the first encounter that he had with this girl, and how the music is so emotional for him. And yeah, so these are romantics, I guess, it's written at the beginning of the 20th century, but it talks about fin de siècle kind of melancholy. That was a thing in French literature at the time, where basically they said, oh, it was this kind of weird melancholic nostalgia that a lot of writers based their life on at the end of the 19th century. So, Victor Hugo was part of that a little bit, but he was part of more like the realists, and then there were the Baudelaire and all of those romantic poets, and so Proust was there. Now, I must say that I vastly preferred the first half of the book to the second half of the book, and now I'm liking the third part of the book, which is only basically 50 pages long. At the end, this book is 570 pages in my book, so yeah. It took me a long time reading, but the first part is about like an autobiographical kind of Proust as a child, Marcel, and well, Proust's first name is Marcel Proust. So, and it talks about his childhood in this little town, and it talks about his impressions about that town. And it does go into funny little side stories about some of the characters in this town who, have different personalities and different gossip. And, one of them is like a hypochondriac, and then there are different people in his family that he talks about. And he talks about him being like kind of a bookish and imaginative child who liked to read. It talks a lot about how the sunlight hits certain parts of buildings and such, and a lot of it is flow of consciousness. So I find that it is extremely INFP in the way that he sees the sensory world with his SI, I would say, and he can look at things. He senses the world through this kind of nostalgic lens, even while he's experiencing it. I think that there is a little bit of synesthesia at the end, where he talks about how different names of places reminds him of different things, which is a pretty INFP thing. Things remind us of other things, and there are some very beautiful metaphors out there, like about the sea foam and rainbows, and it's absolutely wonderful, the metaphors that are in this book. So I was just thinking that I'd make another video about, you know, the actual quotes. He talks a lot about like the church bells ringing, and obviously there's the madeleine that he eats at his aunt's house, and that reminds him of every time that he went to his aunt. And the first part of the book is basically he's an adult, and then he gets into this dream state, and then he realizes that he goes back to when he was a very small child, and he really wanted his mom to kiss him goodnight. And, you know, this was the end of the 19th century, and his parents were not like super affection, like he was not supposed to get a lot of affection, I guess. But so his mom would kiss him goodnight, but he wanted that time with his mom to drag on as long as possible, but then it just made the pain of her leaving like worse and worse. And he would get a little bit manipulative about how to do this. And so, yeah. Also, he wrote this book while Freud was in the middle of his, well, Oedipus complex writing, I guess. So I would say that there is a little bit of that theory going on at the beginning of the book. Then he talks about, well, his childhood experiences and the things that, you know, the nature around him. The second part of the book I did not enjoy as much, but it goes into a very different kind of world, which is the world of Mr. Swann, who is like a family friend to, well, child Proust, I guess. And Mr. Swann goes into like high society and is, you know, there was a time where Mr. Swann was like a good person who would go to the more countryside and be more like go both into the high society and go into the rural society, but then he gets stuck in this kind of weird like this society of people who would gather at the person's place, the Verdurant, and weird stuff happens. I don't know what's happening really, because I don't understand the social codes of the time or whatever is going on, but it seems like they think that Swann is like hiding them or excluding them from high society, and so they get really bitter towards him. And he meets this girl called Odette, and Odette is really infatuated with him at first, and then he kind of convinces himself to fall in love with her because, well, he's that kind of person, I guess, who can do that, which I think INFPs can do that. Like, we can figure out a way to like manipulate our own emotions to like get to a certain result. And he does that so much that he ends up obsessed with her, and then she is less interested in him than he is in her. And he ends up becoming a really creepy guy, and really being jealous and kind of controlling and kind of putting her down, and then going through cycles of loving her and hating her, and basically ignoring the rest of his friends and high society. And basically he wastes like several years of his life pining after this woman that he does meet every day, but that she doesn't care about him. And kind of ironically at the end, somebody tells him that, oh, well, actually Odette really loves you. She keeps talking about you all the time. And at this point, his feelings for her have gone. And like at a certain point, he couldn't keep obsessing over her. It took him ages to stop obsessing. And when he finally gets a proof of her actually loving him back, he's moved on. And that's the end of the second part. And the third part, I'm not finished with it yet, but it goes back to Marcel Proust. But I guess that he's like a young adult now, I'm not really sure. But he dreams of travel, and he wants things to be as authentic as possible, you know? Okay, so he's like a moody teenage young adult person. Pretty INFP of him, but okay. And he dreams sometimes of like the gothic cliffs of Brittany, and sometimes he dreams of like the soft spring of in Tuscany, and he can't make up his mind, and he goes, you know, he realizes that he could access these dreams more easily now through books and through learning about these places rather than actually going there. So he's unlocked these kinds of yearnings in his imagination, which he didn't have before. And I realized that this is pretty relatable to me with my Scotland and Japan stories, where I'm like, you know, I can't decide what I want, and once I unlocked that in my imagination, then it's hard to like get back. So I would say that this book is pretty INFP in the long-winded descriptions of things, which you also see in Tolkien, you know, as an INFP, like the long-winded descriptions and the emotion that's imbued in all of the, like, in the landscape, in the nature, and then in all of these characters that are so pulled by emotions basically all the time. There's not much plot going on, but that's a little bit how the emotional life is much richer than the actual physical life that these characters lead. Not much really happens, so that can be pretty boring for some people. But it's the impressions, and I think that this book is closest that you'd come to like an impressionist painting, but in written form. So I would say I would give it 4 out of 5, but basically because I would give 5 out of 5 for the first half and 3 out of 5 for the second half. Together would make a 4, you know. But I would say that it is an important read. I do like that the cover of the book that I had is basically an impressionist, sort of like impressionist art, kind of. Even though I guess that it's more like postmodern stuff. But it is kind of like painting a picture with, not realistically, but from impressions. And things do get a little bit fuzzy, and there is this theme of dreams, because, well, first he gets into the whole book starts with a dream, and then he gets into a dream again when he eats his madeleine, and then at the end of the Mr. Swann story, Mr. Swann has a dream of meeting Odette one last time, and she's, you know, and so then he wakes up from that dream realizing like, oh, I wasted my life for several years on a woman I didn't like and who didn't like me back. And so that was in that realization. And then at the end we get, Proust dreaming about these places, dreaming about these travels that he's going to do. So I think that there is a lot about the theme of dreams. There's a lot about the theme of what is love, actually, what is obsession, what is art, what do we present to the world. And I did not understand a lot of what was going on, let's just say, because a lot of it is talking about social codes and art that was really relevant at that time and not now. But I would say that I really did enjoy it. So that is what I would say about that. Please go look at, watch Renaud Contini's video about that certain passage of Swann thinking about music, because the description of music is so, it's so true and so particular. He talks about how, you know, the whole heart is transported by the music, and what the music makes the characters think of, and how basically the whole story is based on the music. And he comes back to this theme of music as well when he talks about travels, like the abruptness of change in people's whims and emotions and minds is compared to the sea, but it's also compared to, a phrase of music. So music is a thing is a theme in here as well. And I think that there's also friendship as a theme, but not as much. And yeah, there is also the thing of travel, what is home, who are your people. I think that there are quite a lot of themes in here. I know that you're not supposed to do this, but I do think I went to read a Spark Notes to maybe understand more of what was going on. But the writing is what makes this a great book. It's not the plot. It might not even be the themes. It's really how he agences words together. And I don't think I can do it justice by looking up a translation for all of these bookmarks. It's the flow of the words in French that actually makes it good. So I don't know. I think that you could get the impressions well in English as well if it's a good translator. But I think that it was the language that was used that is... He has all these super long run-off sentences that are several paragraphs long. There are no chapters in this book. That I must say, there are only 3 parts in this whole book. There are paragraphs, but there are no chapters. There's only 3 parts, and 2 of those parts take up like 90% of the book. So, just so you know about that. Yeah, tell me what you guys think. I think it was one of you guys actually that recommended that I read this book. So thank you to whoever that was. I don't know if I'm not going to say the name because I'll probably get it wrong. But yeah, have a great day, everybody. Bye.